Hey everybody, welcome to Watches with Dennis. Ugh, I can't even speak today. Watches with Dennis, and good morning. And this is I guess, fairly spontaneous live stream. I meant to do this yesterday, but unfortunately, I was going to do it as like a lunch live stream, like I often do. Got too busy with work and then some other stuff, and so I didn't do it. And so while people probably possibly if they're up this early. I don't know how many people like to watch live streams on a Saturday, but while people are potentially joining in the chat, let me go ahead and just do some intro stuff while we get going. The big topic today is going to be tiering watch brands, like ranking watch brands. A dangerous game, and I'm not here to create a tier list. I'd probably do that as a private video, not private, but a pre-produced video if I was to do it. And I don't know that I would want to do it because I think that it's the controversy, the risks of all of that are substantive in terms of it seems like a good recipe to upset people and maybe not maybe not achieve much else beyond that. So in terms of recent happenings, though, my last video I did is the State of Collection, which I had done one in November of 2021. So I thought after a year it would make a lot of sense, especially because I've had a lot of shifts happening, especially in the latter part of the year, though I did have some change ups early in 2022. So I sort of captured all that, and you can watch that video if you're curious about that, because those are generally the only times I spend much focus outside of reviews of watches that I personally own. And that's part of the reason why I was not able to do the live stream yesterday. I was doing a trade. I had mentioned this, I think, in the State of the Collection video, that I was looking to probably get rid of my Oyster Perpetual 34 Rolex because I already own a number of other dress watches at this point, and that's how I was using it. So ultimately, I did trade that in, and I haven't reviewed this yet, but today's watch is the one that arrived yesterday and threw off my plans because it came right when I was going to get ready to start doing the live stream. It's a Glashütte Original Panoramic Lunar. This is the old model, the 39 millimeter model, which Watchfinder had. So I did a swap with them. They gave me a little bit better deal than Watchbox on the trade. I was torn on this watch. Obviously, it's got some nicks and stuff in it. It is an older watch, but I like that the older versions didn't have lume, and it was notably cheaper, probably because it's a less popular version. The newer ones, I see them everywhere. They're a lot more everywhere online. I don't know anyone personally who owns Glashütte, but anyway, so and I thought it looked a little flat in the photos, but I figured that was probably due to how they do the radiant dial on it, which is indeed the case. I have other watches that when I film them, look really flat if I have static, sort of steady, even lighting, because they don't have anything to play with because there's no variance. So it does actually look a lot better in person, which I am pleased with. And it came on a bracelet, which is definitely atypical. So good morning, Kevin. I hope you are having a great day. I know there's more storms y'all been dealing with out in Florida, at least fairly recently. And Jason, hello. Yes, Aruba, the island of the Netherlands. Good to see you. Yeah, I felt bad. I didn't have anything out this week. I've just been work. Normally, this is my quieter period. It's all in the lead up to January when state politics starts to kick into play, and we have certain legislative things that we do. But so normally I don't have things too bad. Everyone's cramming in all the meetings that they want to try and get done with before the end of the year. So anyway, I have excuses out the wazoo to go over on terms of why I am slow. Kevin says, I'm working on my next news interviews at my workplace. I don't know if you have an email. I want to send you my news interviews. I do have an email, and it's very easy to remember. It's watcheswithdennis@gmail.com. And it's under the About section. If you go to the YouTube channel, you can go under About. I think it makes you click a little button to like try and prevent bots from emailing. But yeah, Watches with Dennis. I have a number of individuals who've emailed me things, like stories they think maybe I want to cover, or they just ask me questions that they think would be good discussion topics, or they just want to pick my brain. I'm not really much of an expert on anything, but so. And Jason says he just came in from work. Oh, and he brings up politics right away. Am I left or right wing, Democrat or Republican? I would be left leaning on most issues. So, but Kansas is a very conservative state. And professionally, I work in public health. So when I go to lobby, that's the agenda I come with, is a public health agenda. And I mostly work with conservatives because our legislature is very dominated by conservatives. And I will work with anyone as long as they give me what I want, which is tools to improve public health. So, and that, I mean, most of our big bill supporters are conservatives. So, I'm usually after more money. So, my money is universal on both wings of the party. But like in terms of my voting patterns and stuff, yeah, I'm left leaning. So anyway, before I get into watch tiers, which are, be you conservative or liberal, could be polarizing regardless. I did actually want to open with a topic, kind of leads into work stuff. Don't worry, it's totally watch related. I'm going to throw it up here on the screen. I want to talk a little bit about leadership and maybe how, let me put me on the side. Maybe let me put me on the small side. There we go. And how not to do it. So I saw this yesterday and I pulled a screen grab. Now I blurred it because I'm not interested in calling out the brand. I'm not interested in calling out the individual, but this is not how you do something. And I'm going to talk a little bit about why. So here's the background. You could probably get the impression from it in the write-up if you want to read it. But if you don't worry, I'll verbally explain it. So I saw this on a Facebook group. This individual is affiliated with a microbrand watch company, and apparently there was a cosmetic issue that came up with one of the watch. I have no idea what the cosmetic issue is. I don't own this brand. I've never purchased from this brand. And honestly, after seeing this message, I never will purchase from this brand. But it's so interesting. And I remember once sitting in on a training that was done on crisis communication, which if you can ever sit in on a crisis communication, I'm sure there's some on YouTube. If you ever want to watch something, look at how crisis communications go and see if you can find examples of people who do it really well and people who do it really bad. And you can probably think of examples of really bad. In fact, a lot of people would probably say Elon Musk right now, with most of the messaging he's sending out regarding Twitter, is how you do not handle crisis communications, because it does not give you a sense of ownership or stability. It looks kind of like whining, ranting, and it's not my fault. And that's what this falls into. So just real quick, because I think it's so interesting. And again, tune out if you don't care. But so first part is just stating what's happened, the cosmetic issue. Second paragraph, some of these paragraphs are one sentence, but I won't call them paragraphs because you can see the breaks. Second paragraph says it only affects a small number of the pieces that were involved. Now, already not a big deal, but this raises a flag for me. Like, why are you publicly declaring this in a big Facebook group when you're already saying that it, one, only affects owners, and two, only affects a few of them? Why not at most email all of the owners instead of making it a big public spectacle? I don't know yet. We have to keep reading. Paragraph 3 says that they're doing a recall to fix the issue. Okay, good step, fine. I think it's interesting that they say non-compulsory product recall, though. That not great phrasing. So what would be a compulsory product recall? And in the United States, that would normally be something like, this thing will kill children. So again, an odd way to phrase it. Not a big deal, really, because we're talking watches. And I've not yet heard about a killer watch, especially a killer mechanical watch. Maybe if that mainspring came out somehow, pierced through the case somehow with enough force, and then it stabbed someone and they lost their wrist. I mean, I don't know. I'm trying to get really elaborate here to come up with why you would need a compulsory recall. The fourth paragraph is the problem paragraph, the one that bothers me. And so it says, I'll read this out loud. I demand perfection, and I've instructed, I've redacted the person's name, to dismiss the member of staff responsible for not being as diligent as they should have been. This may sound harsh, but I run a tight ship and pay these people well. Errors should not be made. All right. Now, in the world of who do you not want to work for, I'm going to guess 100% will say whoever wrote that paragraph. Because I'm like, okay, let's take me as an example. I work for a governing board. I work for a nonprofit. I mentioned in public health. Okay. I'm paid pretty well. So if I make a single mistake, any mistake, right? Any error, should I be terminated? I would hope not, because I've never in any job I've done been able to be perfect. And as it goes on, I'm going to emphasize a little more. Now, had this been like what Jason has noted, the fatal flaw in the bridge assembly, had this fatal, literally, like fatal, killing people, fatal, firing someone, I get it. Totally makes sense. One of my other hobbies, you see the play field behind me, is pinball. I bring it up almost every time on a live stream. We had recently Stern Pinball, biggest pinball manufacturer in the world, launching James Bond. It has been an atrocious launch. And I have publicly said that their marketing team needs a talking to. Like, they need to have, there should be like a come to Jesus meeting where everyone's getting together and going like, what went wrong? Because mistakes are mistakes, but mistakes on a product launch are a pretty big deal. But that's a far cry from saying they should also all immediately lose their jobs. Part of it is I don't know the context of why the errors on their launch have happened, and I assume some of it had to do with external factors. But my point is, it's extreme to immediately say, okay, you made a mistake. Termination is the solution. At least it seems extreme to me. And as a leader, that's not the solution I turn to first. But I'm going to go through the rest of this real quick because I think it ties a little bit to why I'm so confused by this fourth paragraph. Fifth paragraph is the apology. Nice. This is a solid apology. I've just blurred out the brand name. So that's good. But then sixth paragraph, he says, as said, it is only a few who are affected. Yes, you already said it. I don't know why you're re-emphasizing it. And it may well be that my concerns are not as bothersome to others. Well, but the standards are his. Okay, brand carries his name. Okay, get it. Okay, this is defensiveness, though. It doesn't look good. It doesn't look good. Next paragraph's even more problematic. He yet again repeats from the start that the error is cosmetic and it doesn't affect the watch functionality. And he's already noted he's doing this non-compulsory recall. So why are you berating this? Like you're being repetitive and you saying all this stuff about perfection, honesty, and transparency, which is all good. And then a secondary apology, which isn't really necessary in the final paragraph. And notes that they'll contact each person directly, which is probably how it should have all been done in the first place. So if it's just cosmetic and it's just a small number and the solution's already in place, I don't know why you have to go and get someone fired over this. And again, I don't know all the context here. This is, I'm being a talking head. My impression is, as this is a micro brand, this person doesn't own the manufacturing. I'm guessing that the person I shaded out here is either overseeing or owns the means of production. And so you have a contract arrangement and your contract or you are going to your contractor and demanding they make staff changes. Now, I've engaged in a number of contracts and I have thought about what instances would I ever demand. I've thought about before this, when I would demand a staff level change. And outside of maybe who I directly work with on a project, I couldn't really come up with a reason where I would be thinking the arrogance you have to think you have the right under a contract to control who is hired and fired at an organization is the height of hubris to me. So this is not my point is this is not how if you want to start up a little micro brand and something goes wrong, this is not how you deal with it. One, you probably didn't need to do it at all publicly like this because it was such a small number. Let's think back to Ming, because that was one I lived through, right? I had the Ming Messina Lab collaboration watch. Every single one of those was screwed up. Every 1709 cross collaboration watch had a bad movement. And mine manifested the problem when I pulled it out of the box. Ming got criticized because they were very defensive in one of their responses initially on social media. How they handled the customers was fine. They reached out, prepaid shipping, sent it back, got it fixed. They were transparent with what the issue was. Ultimately, it took them months to identify and post that, but they were transparent. But at no point was I aware of anyone saying, the people at Schwartz Etting, which put together the movement, they need to be fired for failure. And that was a watch that couldn't tell time. And so I'm just like, this is someone I would never be able to work with. And I've seen other posts from this individual, and I'm not particularly surprised that and I checked the comments on this. There weren't very many because I wondered, you can see from the blue shading here that this is someone who has like moderator powers in the Facebook group. So honestly, I think everyone would be too scared of getting punished in the group for criticizing this response, because I was tempted to go in and say, this is not how a professional works. You thinking that because you contract with someone, I don't care how much you pay in the contract, that you're going to dictate that someone who screwed up 2 watch faces gets to be, again, was it deliberate? Like, does this person have a history of failure? I'm not saying that there might not be a reason that the person deserves termination, but for an outsider, because that's what a contract arrangement is, you're an outsider to come in and dictate staff. I worked for an executive director in my younger years, and I remember at one point, and he was fairly passive as a leader, but there was at one point where the governing board, who he worked for, demanded something. And I remember he very much put his foot down, at least amongst staff. And he's like, staff works for me. I work for the board. If the board is upset with me, they can get rid of me, but they are not to manage staff. That's not their place. And this is like that, but even one more segment removed, because I'm assuming that this production group has more than just this one contract. And this seems very hoity-toity. Anyway, I was just like, I thought this would be a good little intro while we were getting warmed up here, because I got my dander up a little bit on this one, because I was like, "Ooh, this is not how you do it." But of course, that's just my philosophy on how I was trained in leadership. And I see Jason said, "Imagine if an intern delivered him a medium latte that's a tad too sweet." Well, yeah, exactly. If someone gets this ridiculous over an issue that affected, again, per their own announcement, a very small number of watches. And folks, this isn't Rolex. This is a micro brand. Okay. This is someone who's not chosen to make, they don't own the means of their own production. They've come up with some designs or whatever, and they pay other people to execute their dream. And that's fine. I mean, if I was to get involved in watches, that'd be how I would end up doing it, because I don't want to build all that stuff. But you do give up control for that. Honestly, I guess this is the sort of person that, who's he going to go to if they say no? Let's say the person goes back and says, I'd love to know. If he's like, no, I'm not firing that person. Is he going to take his contract and go somewhere else? There are multiple factories people turn to for things like case construction and stuff, but there are only a few. So anyway, I found it very, very odd. So my advice, just my opinion, if you happen to run a micro brand, do not run it like this if there is an issue. There is no reason to have made that a public thing at all. The correction response was the right correction. Trying to flex and show how dedicated you are to quality by going out and just like, what's that management style zine? All workers are in it just to make a paycheck, and they don't care about their quality or whatever the philosophy is. It's a debunked philosophy. But anyway, he seems like a bad manager, which is probably why he has to do everything by contract. But I'm just speculating at this point. So let's talk about the topic of the day, and that is ranking. We like to rank, right? Human beings like to rank things. So ranking watch brands into tiers has always been so. Of course, I've seen it since I first got into watches, and I've seen so many different ways to do it. And I've seen YouTube videos where they go about and do it, and they look like fun videos to do. Of course, I don't know if the comments end up being very fun, but I always think, okay, well, I get it, because we all do it. We all kind of put things into buckets, which is normal, because it's the only way to really manage if you're trying to go about, well, I want to get my first luxury watch. Well, you have to have some sort of consensus on what a luxury watch is, right? So I'm going to go ahead and share one here. This is the one from the handle is Earth Jade on WatchUSeek. It's going to be noted here at the top. And it was last updated earlier this year. So I liked it because it was really current. It also has a whole lot of brands on it. In fact, I feel that this has too many brands to easily be able to discuss. I don't know a lot of these brands, so that's part of it. It's just my own ignorance is going to make this a bit of a challenge. But I thought it would just kind of be fun to walk through. And those of you who are attending live, of course, can provide for you. We'll go category by category, because I think that's the easiest way to do it. So anyway, this one's interesting to me because, as you can see on the screen, they didn't just do, a lot of times I see maybe 4 tiers. So you might see non-luxury, entry-level luxury, luxury, ultra luxury. So that'd be your 4, and then possibly a 5th if you want to do a super high-end luxury. And hey, BJ, welcome to the live stream on Saturday. I don't know why I added on Saturday, because you probably already know that it is Saturday because it's Saturday. Anyway, so this guy went and he did more categories. So he's got, well, it's on left down and then right down. So we'll have to scroll a little bit. But so he did a consumer category, an enthusiast category, quasi luxury. So that's sort of an interesting change up. Then he did his entry level luxury, regular luxury, the unleaded of luxuries, I guess. High-end luxury, ultra luxury. So that's how he chose to break it up. Again, I think these tiers are logical. Whether or not, like, I probably, if I were tiering, I wouldn't do this many of them unless I was letter grading them. Like you've probably seen. If you've ever seen like what's his name, the Nico guy, I know he had one where he did like A B C D F, and I've seen a couple others do it like that too. I get doing it when you're doing letter grades, but so let's walk through consumer. So again, I'm not pulling from I pulled this from the thread, but I'm not reading from the thread. So Earth Jade, when he created this, I know I read the thread at one point months ago, but has noted like what the logic was behind this. But so consumer would sound to me like these are watches that are designed not to necessarily appeal to watch aficionados, but to just be sort of an entry level consumer grade watch that if someone goes, you know what, I need to get a watch, they would look at these brands, right? And I think a lot of these make sense, though, of course, it gets weird because some of these consumer brands are also big time enthusiast brands, right? So we know Orient and Seiko are big time both. Like they have a huge line of watches that just everyday folks that don't really care about watches buy. They also have, especially Seiko has a lot of collectors. I've seen he's worked in like the fashion brands here. I think this is Daniel Wellington. Again, I don't know all these logos or names or companies, so feel free to correct me when I'm saying things wrong. But Daniel Wellington, Movement, those are both ones that I would flag as those sort of stereotypical fashion brands. Tissot, I thought was interesting to be just in the consumer list. They do have some lower cost watches, so that kind of fits, at least on the quartz side. That makes, I mean, they've got quartz watches that are priced around the same pricing as Citizen, which I do think makes sense as a consumer brand. Timex, of course, famous consumer brand. Swatch, I guess. I mean, it's interesting because Swatch was always designed to be someone's second watch, not like what a consumer would just go out and buy. But they are priced in a range like that. Now, this is not the Vosstok I think most people think of. I think this is European Vosstok, not Russian Vosstok, because Russian Vosstok shows up later, which I think is kind of weird, which we'll talk about. I don't know Skagen, Calvin Klein fashion brand. I don't know Mathy Tissot. It's got the word Tissot in it, so that's confusing. I don't know Nixon. Junkers I've heard of, but I don't know anything about them. Yeah, Victronorex, I would agree with that one. Beluva, I don't know. Again, Beluva, is it big enough as a consumer brand? I'd almost think that was more of an enthusiast brand, but Fossil, yes, consumer. Seagull, again, that's a polarizing one. So it's like the manufacturer that's the popular manufacturer out of China, but a lot of enthusiasts really get into it. So you see, it gets weird, right? So let's move down to the enthusiast category to sort of see where the differences lie. And I wish this was laid out a little bit differently. I could have cut and pasted it, but I'm far too lazy to do that for a live stream. So, okay. So now here we are. We're not yet in luxury, but this is where they're grouping brands that they think watch people that want watches turn to, right? So Laco and Stova, the two of the 5 historic Flieger manufacturers, show up here on the enthusiast end. They do, it's interesting. Laco in particular does have a lot of watches that are well below luxury price because they use non-Swiss movements in them as part of the strategy on that. But of course, they also have a number of watches that trade for several thousand. I think the struggle with that is why you see this Seiko prospects here. So it seems like because Seiko's financial spread is so wide now, where you've got things like as far down as the Seiko 5 on the mechanical end, which you can find Seiko 5 watches for around $100 new, all the way up to the multi-$1,000s, over $1,000 of the prospects line. I'm guessing this was an attempt to sort of segregate Seiko consumer end and Seiko enthusiast end. The thing is, it's not been done for any other company. And of course, that's going to beg the question. I mean, Seiko's bigger than everyone else really on the list. So I get it, but it does sort of beg the question about like, okay, well, so Stova, yeah, I could see Stova in the enthusiast area. Laco, though, really ranges on the pricing. Archimede, I guess so. I thought, again, it depends where our definition is, right? I think some of these brands have a lot of watches they sell for over $1,000, like Doxa. So Doxa confuses me because most of their watches are or 1,000 plus. Let's say, I don't want to say well over 1,000 because you might think that means like 5,000. So I'm a little surprised. I do agree that it's an enthusiast brand over a consumer brand. Hamilton being Enthusiast makes sense to me. Now, here is a weird one. So this is Russia. Yeah, you can't see with my head. I apologize. This is Russia Vosstok. But this is like the cheap Vosstok. These are the Komordirsky field watches and the super cheap dive watches, and like everything's basically under $100. The European Vosstok is the one that sells the more expensive watches. Now, it may also be a more established consumer brand, but I'm wondering a little bit if this is like a Western bias sort of thing. Like in Russia, do these not just get sold as consumer watches? Are only enthusiasts keeping traditional Soviet Vosstok alive at this point? I'm not sure that's true, but interesting. Yema here on Enthusiast. I think that makes sense. Steinhardt. Yeah, sure. Marathon. Marathon is from a consumer perspective, I'd say yes, it's an enthusiast watch. Marathon as a brand, though, mostly sells to governments. That used to be their only business model. So I find that kind of on the fence. Like it's almost a consumer brand, government consumer, but hey, governments are people too, right? Like corporations are people. Anyway, Certina and Alpina, I guess. Glycine, I agree with. I don't know Certina and Alpina very well, so I can't really say on that. Squale, yeah, I would say Enthusiast. I don't know Le Jour. I don't know Review Taman. I don't know Seven Friday or Aristo. I don't know a lot of watches, apparently. I need to up my game on education. But, okay, so that's what he's arguing with Enthusiast. I get it. You already see where I think there's some controversy on what some of this stuff is. I'm going to put my head to the side now because it's getting too hard to see. Okay. There, we can fix this. So now we're quasi luxury. Okay. So I sigh because I'm really torn on. I'm starting to get really torn on this. And again, this was last revised in February, but it's like, are we picking one specific watch? Are we averaging the watches? What's our definition? Is it the quality? Is it the price point? Because I'm struggling with this. So, okay. Zen is quasi luxury. Yeah, I would have probably, and I don't, again, comment, those of you live, comment in the chat where you disagree, but Zen, Younghods, Fortis, yes, I would say that. Oris, I would not. Like at this point, I'm thinking, it depends, right? Oris is like, with their in-house movements, are we really treating them as quasi luxury still? But you see, some of their watches aren't in-house. But whether or not your movements in-house is mood as well, right? Because JLC made movements for Patek Vacheron and AP over the years. So it's like, I don't agree that Oris I would put as quasi luxury. I do like BJ saying Gucci. And again, yeah, see, Gucci to me, and I don't know Gucci. Like, I would have immediately thought fashion brand that should be down at the consumer level. But here it is. Jason says he thinks they've been done by price point only. And if that's the case, it makes more sense. So we could think about it kind of like that. But I struggle still. So, all right, Vempe. So again, one of the original 5 Flieger manufacturers. I don't know what the average Vempe watch price is. Their Flieger price is like just under IWC's, though. It's like over $3,000. It's not a cheap watch. It's not like Stova and Laco, where most of the Fliegers are like $1,500 or under. I'm loading up in another window right now, Vempe, because I know they mostly sell watches now, like they're Vempe jewelers or something. But so I'm looking. Where's the Vempe watches? Vempe Glasuta. Sorry, I can't see chat right now because I'm looking on the screen I normally monitor the chat on. All right, so prices. Ironwalker, $39.95. These are in euros. All right, so 4,000 euros, 2,600 euros, 3,200 euros, 4,000 euros, 2,500 euros. Let's go to some of the Zeitmeisters. 1,500 euros, 2,800 euros. Yeah, no, I think they're too expensive. So again, maybe that no one knew. Maybe no one looked at Vempe very much. I only know about Vempe because I loaded them up to see if they still made Fliegers when I was doing research on the Fliegers. So Okay, Mido, sure. Ball, I guess. Ball's got really expensive watches too. They just all end up on discount because they have no resale value. Christopher Ward, yes, I would agree. I don't know Titoni. I would agree on Frederic Constant. Union Glasuta, yeah, I guess so. That's really only available mostly in Europe. We don't have Union in the US, so it's difficult. That's a Swatch group though. A little surprised at Anne Ordain, but again, maybe just off the pricing, like Jason noted, could be the case. But they've got such a long wait list to try and get those. Rado, yeah, on the pricing. See, Rado's kind of at the but they're trying to move up market too. But like I think their collection's more consistent on a lower price point than Oris's is. But again, that's just my take. Meister Singer, yes, I would agree that this quasi luxury makes sense for them. I don't know Tatima. I don't know Eberhard. I don't know Doobie and Schlotterbahn. Epos, I don't know that. I don't know a lot of these. I think I already commented Fortis. Yeah, that from what I know of them, that makes sense. I don't know Raymond Wheel. Okay. All right. So I don't know. I'm getting it's getting, I don't know if it's getting more controversial because we're actually getting fewer and fewer brands. So now we're focusing on the right side. You can't see other side of the screen. We're focusing on the right side of the chart. So entry level luxury, right? Okay. Nomos, yes, I would agree. Tudor, that's how they're positioned. Again, obviously, there's a pricing spectrum, so it gets weird. Tudor, if we're talking things like a lot of the black bays, the smiley face dial ones in particular, and like the 1926s, yeah, definitely entry level luxury. But of course, they've got solid, solid gold cased black bays too. So it's all weird, and Tag's the same way. Tag's got some fairly inexpensive at luxury pricing watches, but they have also got a lot of higher end. So again, Hermès. Why is Hermès not with Gucci? I don't know enough about Hermès. I think they just recently won some GPHC awards for something, but I don't know how common that watch is. So maybe that was a one-off. And Chanel is another something that obviously BJ's know that. Chanel, he asks about Chanel. Again, these are like fashion brands or fragrance brands, but maybe they're hiring better watchmakers. Or they just priced them higher. I don't know. It's weird to me. Vulcain, been a while since I've researched Vulcain, but yeah, that would make sense. Ming, originally, I would say maybe entry level luxury. I don't know. It seems like every model number just goes up another $1,000. So I'm not quite sure what's going on there, but I don't think that's unreasonable to place them here. Bell and Ross, I guess. I've not really looked at Bell and Ross very much. Montblanc, I do agree. Most of their watches would probably be entry level pricing. Though as they lean more and more into their maneuver factory movements, I don't know if that's going to hold. Bremont, I think. Yeah, I don't know Brunio, Tokyo, or Graham, or Manise. Tiffany. I didn't know Tiffany did watches. I thought they just like co-branded on stuff like Patek. So Carl F. Brashear, I guess. Again, I haven't looked at too many of their watches, so I'm a little shaky on that. Overall, I'd say most of these look okay to me. Most of the big brand ones, at least. I don't get like the Hermès and Chanel being here, but the rest I can kind of accept. Okay, so now we're in regular luxury, unleaded luxury. Ralph Lauren. Okay. And Louis Vuitton. All right. I can't even read this. Habring. I don't know Habring, so I don't know that. I don't know why. Again, I don't understand where the tiers are with the fashions, like Hermès. Like I've heard of these, like in men's stuff. I've seen like neckties from these companies, and an Hermès tie versus I don't know, Gucci. I guess doesn't do ties. I don't know. I don't. It's not apples to apples apparently because these are all in different groupings. Cartier, sure, why not? Regular. I mean, they have, especially the tank line, they've got a lot. I guess that would kind of fall in that pricing category. They do a lot of third-party movements for a lot of their watches, though they seem to be kind of pivoting a bit from that lately, given the demand. Breitling, I would agree. IWC, sure. I don't know Dior. Chrono Swiss, yes. Zenith. Okay, so it depends again, right? So luxury brand wise, if we're thinking like their big pilot stuff, sure. We're thinking the El Primero, the pricing is getting closer to high end, right? I mean, we'll talk about the high end brands here in a moment, but like most of their chronographs are like over $8,000 or over $9,000. And then there's the DeFi. I've heard Tim also say it's DeFi, and I've always saying DeFi, so I'm going to say DeFi because I'm going to assume he knows what he's talking about. So their DeFi series though are super expensive high end watches. So I don't know about I question this one. I think they might have needed to go into high end. Grand Seiko is luxury. Yes, I would agree. Most of their watches are that way. Omega the same. Panerai, yes. I don't know Corum. I know of them, but I don't know anything about their watches. Okay, so most of these I've agreed with. I'm like, I don't get the Ralph Lauren Louis Vuitton thing, and I do question a bit about Zenith in particular. IWC's kind of, again, most of their watches I think would fall in the pricing here. So I get it, but I don't. So high end, okay. So Rolex, right? I mean, most of their watches are like in the range of what, 7,000. I'm not going into the jeweled stuff, not going into the precious metal stuff, right? Most of their watches that they sell, retail price wise, are like between $7,000 and $15,000. And I see BJ's asked, is Nomos missing from the list? No, Nomos was back down under the entry level. They're not like an alphabetical order, so it gets a little weird to hunt for some of these. I had to read the list 4 times to find Stova on it, which is in the enthusiast category here. But yeah, no, they put Nomos under entry level luxury, which a lot of their initial watches I think were priced that way. But I kind of feel like you're thinking very much like that. Their campus club watch is entry level. Some of their other stuff is, I think, moving more into the luxury line. But overall, I think it fits reasonably fits where they put it, and BJ appears to agree with that as well. So again, high-end luxury, thinking Rolex, setting aside the day date, which is not their biggest seller. It's the sports watches, right? And we don't get to count what happens on the third-party market, I'm assuming. So we're talking like $7,000 for OPs up to about $15,000 for Daytonas. That's steals what they trade in. So that's the high-end pricing. So that's why I meant, why is Zenith not here when a lot of their watches are in the same price tier? If it's about price. I do agree that I would put Rolex in high-end luxury at this point. 10 years ago, I think I might not have, but at this stage, I guess so. Blancpain, yes, their watches are in that price range. Glashütte Original, I don't know as much about. A lot of their watches are in the higher pricing, but I'd say they tend to average lower than Rolex and Blancpain. Again, it depends. The panel line's more pricey than the Senator line. Senator line's more pricey than some of their other stuff. Their sports watches are kind of pricey, but I think their dives are under 10,000. But again, the Rolex Submariner no date's still under 9. So okay, I would say yes, I think so. It seemed like for a hot minute there last year, people were trying to move Gerard Perregaux like up into another tier and like make it a $40,000 watch brand. I'm maybe making that up from things I saw off of Reddit, but regardless, yeah, sure, I'll find high-end luxury. That's fine. Chopard, yeah. Frank Mueller, yeah. Hublot, yeah. Ulysse Nardon, I would agree. Jaeger Lecoutre or JLC, yes. Creedor, I don't know anything about Creedor. Harry Winston, yes, at least it tries to be high-end luxury. I mean, that's the brand under Swatch that just like sprinkles diamonds on everything, right? Roger Dubuis. I've heard of Roger Dubuis a lot. I don't know a lot about the brand, like where it would rank. So I'll say I've always heard it was a higher end brand. So I think it wouldn't be any lower than where it is. So overall, I think most of this list makes a lot of sense to me. I just really mostly question why Zenith isn't in it. So then we got the last one, right? Ultra luxury. Woo. So is this pricing, or are we now talking about like fancy mixed stuff? So, okay, El Longanzona makes sense, right? And the Holy Trinity, Patek, Vacheron, Audemars Piguet, all those make sense. Breguet, no, I don't think so. I think Breguet is a tier under this at this point. I think Swatch wishes Breguet was this, but Swatch also doesn't seem to treat Breguet very well. I don't know what's going on with Breguet. At one point, I suppose so. I mean, it's cool. Like you can get one of their marine watches for and find out that the dial's actually all like hand lathed gold, but it's like a $15,000 watch too. Like it's not all that. Like money wise, it's not all that. I don't know what's going on with Breguet, but part of it just seems to be like Swatch doesn't know what they're doing with it. So, and I think it's interesting that, well, I would agree Swatch would put Breguet above Harry Winston in their hierarchy. Is it? I think they're trading on the past. Jacquette Droz, I don't know much about. Resonance. I look at their watches every year at Watches and Wonders, online. So, like tech wise, I don't remember what they sell for. I know tech wise they do some pretty innovative things. Mosier makes sense. Journe makes sense. I don't know anything about Beauvais or Van Cleef. Arnold and Son makes sense. MBNF makes sense. Excuse me. Richard Mille, I guess on price makes sense. Otherwise, I'd probably kick them down a tier. Chespec, I don't know. They make really nice watches too, but to me they're kind of like Breguet, and I'd almost drop them a tier because I don't know if they're really doing anything all that impressive other than charging a lot for watches, and their watches get a pretty big discount on them. And I don't know Armand Strom. So anyway, they covered a lot of brands in this thing. I mean, this is a pretty impressive list. Overall, I would say, like structurally, this Earth Jade, I think he did a pretty good job. I focused more on where I disagree than where I agree, but that's because where I agree isn't nearly as interesting. But I think it's really tough when you think about to do this, and I'd say that's probably something worth talking about briefly here as I wrap up on doing tiers of brands, because I think the problem that we run into, and we talked about it with Seiko, we talked about it with Nomos, Rolex even, I was very dismissive of a lot of their precious metal watches because, especially if we're thinking about price, the spectrum of money, there, get my hands balanced right, is so wide on so many of these brands. Like there more brands are like Nomos and Rolex now than they are like Swatch, where like everything is like within $200 of each other. Or Vosstok, Russian Vosstok, not Euro Vosstok, where everything's like within $75 of each other. So there's not, some of these brands don't really span out all that much on pricing. Orient by and large doesn't, though. I mean, they do have some of their other, they kind of have their Orient upper end. It's not like factors higher than their low end, but especially once you move out of the consumer brand in particular, some of this stuff, they're playing in too many puddles, right? They're like a child jumping into too many little rain puddles at this point. So you see a company like Nomos, a company like Breitling, a company like IWC, where you've got and Tudor, where you've got a lot of like third-party entry-level stuff to get people into the brand. Not like Rolex, where getting into the brand is getting an Oyster Perpetual, which still costs you over $7,000. But then you've got Tudor saying, well, here's our Black Bay in gold for $16,000. And Nomos is like, here's our new in-house super cool movement. And this watch costs 5 times as much as the one that you buy for all the college grads. And IWC, which, if you go into like their Portuguese or in Pilot watches, and you can get into 5 figures very quickly in IWC versus their kind of standard, maybe traditional looking Flieger at 4,500, or they've got stuff even lower than that. That's their less popular lines. They play like the Portofino. So that's where I think it's so hard to do a brand kind of grouped in this fashion: consumer, enthusiast, luxury, entry luxury, ultra luxury. And that's where I think maybe doing the letter grades makes better sense, where we would be going through. That might be a fun thing we could consider doing at some point. I don't know. It's a lot of work and I'm pretty lazy, but like going through and trying to rate how are the companies doing, because Orient doesn't want to be Rolex, right? And Rolex isn't trying to be Patek Philippe. So I think thinking about it maybe more in terms of like, how are they performing as a company is more meaningful. But something like this is very useful, because if you meet someone, or again, if like sometimes I have people email me, or especially people from pinball, because I'm better known in pinball than I am in watches, because I've been content creating pinball for so long. I'll have people that say something like, "Hey Dennis, I want to get my first nice watch." And it's like, okay, well, what do you mean by nice? Do you want like robust, or do you mean like a luxury watch? And like, they mean a luxury watch, and then they like have a price range in mind. Something like what we've been talking about here, something like this, where there are categories of consumer and entry level and luxury. This is useful for that sort of discussion, because then I'm able to kind of point them to brands and say, here's where, here are the brands that play a lot in like the style you want or the category of robustness or respect of luxury status that you're interested in. And then, talking about your price range, here's like if you're thinking if you have $5,000 and you want to go and buy Rolex, that's not a brand you get to play in new in box. Okay. So you need to rule them out. But there are other, like if you want or if you're interested in Breitling, we can find you a new in box Breitling for under $5,000. So that's where it's useful. So this has its own purpose. It's just it's a little sloppy by design of the companies, not by design of the person who created this. I think they worked really hard trying to make this, but it's just too many companies span too much. Seiko's probably the poster child of it. They want to have their cake and eat it too. They want to have watches that cost more than some grand Seikos used to cost, and they still have watches that on sale are under $100. So it just depends. But anyway, that is it for today's live stream. I hope those of you who tuned in live enjoyed it. I hope those of you who tuned in the recording didn't find it too overly tedious. And if you did, hopefully you know that there's a fast forward button. You can skip to the parts you care about. I don't know when my next video will be. I do plan to have one out before the end of next weekend reviewing the Panamanic Lunar I got from Glashütte, because I'll have over a week on it by then, and that's usually my threshold it's always been my threshold before I do a watch review. So I do have a review coming, but other than that, I don't necessarily have anything I'm working on unless there's a cool, interesting announcement I want to give some first thoughts on. But there's been a few lately, but nothing that I was motivated to talk about. So anyway, that is it. And I wish you all a very pleasant weekend. Take care.